You know that feeling, right? When you're trying to wrap your head around some uh tricky English grammar point,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe that anxiety that just sort of bubbles up right before you have to speak in a meeting.
Oh, definitely.
It feels like your own mind is, I don't know, throwing obstacles in your way sometimes.
Yeah.
So if you've ever felt like held back by those emotions while learning, especially English, well, this deep dive is really for you.
Okay.
I've been digging through a really interesting conversation. It's from the Master Your Emotions, Master Your English podcast.
Right. The one with Sarah, the native speaker, and Leo, the learner.
Exactly. And our mission today is basically to pull out the key insights from what they talked about,
Okay.
to help you understand how your emotions are actually impacting your learning journey. And maybe even better, give you some practical ways to sort of take the reins.
So you can learn with more confidence, more ease.
Precisely. Learn with more confidence and ease.
That's a great point you raise, about our minds feeling like obstacles. What Sarah and Lena really got into is that learning isn't just like a thinking exercise, is it? It's deeply tied to our emotional state.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think about it. I mean, neuroscience actually shows that the emotional centers in our brains, they're closely linked to memory, to learning processes.
Right.
So how we feel. It directly influences how well we actually absorb and, hang on to new information.
Okay, so let's dig into the basics then. Sarah started by asking Leo a really fundamental question.
Right. Which was,
what are emotions anyway? And they kind of landed on a pretty clear definition.
yeah.
That emotions are essentially our bodies reacting to things happening around us externally, but also our internal thoughts and feelings.
Exactly. And Leo's example, right, feeling nervous before speaking English, that perfectly shows that internal trigger leading to a physical response. But what was also really insightful was Sarah's point.
What was that?
That even really experienced speakers, native English presenters giving talks, they still feel nervous sometimes. It really drives home that these emotional responses, they aren't a sign you're failing somehow.
Right. It's just human.
It's a universal human experience.
Yeah.
The key difference, like they explored, is how we learn to handle those feelings, navigate them.
Which, okay, brings us nicely to those specific emotional triggers, the ones that pop up when we're learning English. Leo shared some really relatable ones, I thought, like the fear of making mistakes, looking silly.
Oh, yeah. The fear of judgment, too.
Yes. And that frustration when you just can't seem to grasp something new.
Anyone learning a language has felt that, absolutely.
Definitely.
And Sarah offers this really powerful reframe here. It's quite interesting.
Okay.
She suggested that instead of just seeing these, negative emotions as bad,
Yeah.
we can see them as signals. Fear, for example, might actually mean that something is important to you, that you really care about doing well.
Huh. Okay, I see that.
And maybe even more surprising, frustration. She suggested it could be a sign you're right on the edge of a real breakthrough.
Really?
Frustration.
Think about it. Frustration often comes up when our current understanding is being challenged, right? And that discomfort, it's actually a necessary step sometimes in expanding what we know.
Wow.
So maybe a question for you to think about.
No.
Could you maybe start seeing those frustrating moments not as roadblocks, but, I don't know, potential leaps forward?
That really flips the script, doesn't it? It changes how you think about it.
Completely.
They then moved on to something we all know and maybe love to hate, that inner critic,
Yes.
the voice in your head.
Leo described it perfectly, didn't he? You're not good enough. Your English is bad. It's just harsh.
So harsh. And I think a lot of us can identify with that kind of self-talk.
For sure.
That inner critic can be incredibly good at, well, undermining our motivation,
Yeah.
chipping away at our confidence. But what's really crucial to get, as Sarah pointed out, is that almost everyone struggles with this inner critic. To some degree.
So it's not just me.
Not at all. It's not some unique personal flaw. And her strategy for dealing with it, it's remarkably simple, actually, but really powerful.
What is it?
Speak to yourself with the same kindness, the same understanding you'd offer a friend.
Oh, wow.
Just think about that for a second. If a friend was struggling with their English, would you just constantly berate them, tell them they're not good enough?
No, of course not.
Probably not, right? So why do we often subject ourselves to that kind of really harsh internal dialogue?
That's a really valuable perspective. Treating ourselves with a bit more compassion could definitely take the edge off feeling so overwhelmed.
Exactly.
And to illustrate this, Sarah shared a story, right, about a student named Tom.
Yes, Tom. He was apparently incredibly shy, terrified of speaking English.
Why?
So worried about being judged for his accent.
Oh, okay. That's common.
Very common. That initial fear of judgment is something so many learners face. But what's really encouraging about his story is how he actually overcame it.
How did he do it?
Well, Sarah's advice to him was fantastic. She basically said, let them laugh. You're learning a second language. That's brave.
Oh, reframing it like that.
Exactly. It reframes that perceived vulnerability into like a display of courage.
Mm-hmm.
And the key takeaway from Tom's journey really is that confidence in speaking.
Yeah.
It isn't about hitting some mythical level of perfection straight away.
Right. It doesn't just appear.
No, it's built through the act of showing up, practicing, putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
Even when you're feeling, nervous or apprehensive.
Absolutely. Show up anyway. So, okay. How can we take these insights and actually use them? Sarah and Leo then got into 5 specific, actionable mindset tips.
Right, for gaining more emotional control in our learning.
The first one is surprisingly simple. Just name the emotion.
Just name it.
Yeah. Just consciously acknowledging, okay, right now I'm feeling nervous. Apparently that can actually start to diffuse its intensity.
That act of labeling.
Yeah.
It creates a bit of psychological distance, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, it allows you to sort of observe the feeling rather than being completely swept away by it. It's like identifying a storm cloud. Once you name it, you can start to anticipate it, maybe manage its impact.
Okay, I like that analogy. The second tip is one we hear a lot, but for good reason.
Let me guess. Breathing.
Deep breathing, yes. Sarah suggested just 3 slow, deep breaths. A quick way to help calm the brain down when those anxious feelings start bubbling up.
And there's real physiology behind that. It's not just, wishful thinking.
Right.
Deep, conscious breathing. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the body's rest and digest system, basically.
Okay.
And that counteracts the fight or flight response that often gets triggered by stress and anxiety. It helps bring your heart rate down, blood pressure.
Good to know it actually works scientifically. Okay, tip number 3. Move your body.
Get physical.
Yeah. Whether it's a few jumping jacks, some stretching, even just a quick walk around the room, physical activity can be a really effective way to release that pent-up emotional energy.
Totally. Movement helps shift your mental focus, for one, and it also releases endorphins, those natural mood boosters. It's a way to physically process some of that tension. Give yourself a mental reset.
Makes sense. Okay, 4th practical tip. Talk to someone.
Connection.
Yeah. Sharing your struggles, how you're feeling with a friend, maybe a teacher, another language learner, it can be incredibly helpful.
Why do you think that is?
Well, partly realizing you're not alone in facing these challenges, right?
Definitely. That social connection, The feeling of validation you get from sharing experiences,
Yeah.
it can be a powerful antidote to difficult emotions.
Yeah.
Plus, you might get new perspectives, maybe coping strategies you hadn't thought of. That sense of shared experience is really reassuring.
Okay. And the final actionable tip they shared, actively reframe your thoughts.
Cognitive reframing.
Exactly. So instead of letting that negative self-talk take over, like, I'll never be fluent, consciously try to replace those thoughts
With what?
with more positive, more encouraging affirmations. Things like, I'm learning, or I'm steadily improving.
This is so vital. Our thoughts have such a profound impact on our emotions, don't they?
Absolutely.
By consciously choosing to engage in more positive, more self-compassionate self-talk, we can gradually shift our emotional patterns, build up greater emotional resilience over time.
They also briefly touched on building your emotional vocabulary.
Expanding the words you use for feelings.
Yeah, just running through words like anxious, proud, overwhelmed, relieved, and encouraging listeners to actually practice using them.
That's a subtle but important point.
Why important?
Because having a nuanced vocabulary to describe your emotions lets you pinpoint what you're feeling more accurately. Instead of just like a general sense of unease, recognizing anxiety versus frustration allows for more targeted, more effective coping strategies. Plus, it's essential for clear communication in any language, right?
Good point.
Yeah.
Then Sarah and Leo talked about building daily emotional habits.
Like a routine for your mental well-being.
Kind of. Like mental fitness. Things like starting your day with positive affirmations.
Okay.
Keeping a gratitude journal, maybe. Focusing on what you appreciate. Doing regular emotional check-ins. Just noticing, how am I feeling today?
Yeah.
And practicing self-compassion.
Reminding yourself it's okay to struggle.
Exactly. Reminding yourself, it's okay. I'm learning.
This idea of daily mental fitness is really key, I think. Just like consistent physical exercise strengthens your body.
Yeah.
These small, regular practices build your emotional resilience over time. They create this foundation, self-awareness, positive self-regard.
That helps you navigate the ups and downs.
Exactly. The inevitable ups and downs of learning. These aren't quick fixes, obviously. They're consistent habits that really yield significant benefits long term.
One particularly interesting point they raised was about reframing fear, specifically in speaking situations.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
Sarah suggested that when you feel those familiar signs of nervousness before speaking English, heart racing, palms sweaty.
Usual suspects.
Try consciously telling yourself, I'm excited, not scared.
The mindset magic trick.
Is that what it's called?
Well, what's so insightful about it is that the physical sensations of fear and excitement, they can actually be pretty similar.
True.
So by consciously choosing to label those sensations as excitement, you can tap into a more positive, more energized emotional state.
And that could boost your confidence, improve performance.
It really could. It's about harnessing that energy rather than being paralyzed by it.
Interesting. Finally, they did a little role play exercise.
Putting into practice.
Yeah, imagining common scenarios, like forgetting a word mid-sentence.
No, the worst.
Or maybe getting a compliment on your accent, and then focusing on the emotions that might come up.
Like feeling embarrassed or maybe proud.
Exactly. And how to respond constructively. It really brought home how important it is to connect language learning with real-life emotional experiences.
That practical application is just so crucial, isn't it? It bridges that gap between understanding these concepts, intellectually.
Yeah.
And actually implementing them in real-world interactions. It reinforces that language isn't just some abstract system of grammar and vocabulary.
It's more than that.
It's a tool for expressing and understanding the whole spectrum of human emotions.
So, okay, to kind of bring all this together, the core message here seems to be that our emotions aren't some like negative force working against our learning goals.
Not at all.
They actually give us valuable information about what we care about, where we might be hitting challenges.
Right. There's signals.
So learning to understand what those feelings are signaling and then developing strategies to guide them, that's absolutely crucial.
And not just for mastering English, right?
No, for more effective learning generally.
Yeah.
And, well, personal growth in all parts of our lives.
And if we connect this back to you, the listener, developing this kind of emotional awareness, this self-regulation, it isn't just about hitting a specific language goal.
It's bigger than that.
It's a fundamental skill. It contributes to your overall well-being, your ability to navigate challenges, pursue your goals effectively, whatever they might be.
Exactly. By really tuning into and learning to guide your emotions, you truly unlock that potential to become, well, unstoppable on your learning journey. Remember, language is so much more than just the words. It's about the feeling, the intention, the connection you create when you communicate.
Which, raises a really important question for you to maybe reflect on.
Okay.
When you encounter a challenge or maybe a setback in your learning, whether it's English or anything else, what is your typical emotional response?
Good question.
Just take a moment, maybe consider that. And perhaps experiment with one or two of the emotional mastery techniques we've talked about today in your own learning. What feels like the most helpful starting point for you?